My name is Stephen Caster. I'm one of the Thesis Assistants. So today everybody's kind of here, because they have to be, but also what we're trying to do today is kind of go through the thesis manual, go through your documents themselves, and just kind of point out some common errors that we see, so that hopefully when this first submission comes around, which is December 5th, which is coming up quick, there will not be that many errors, i.e. it makes it easier for you guys. You don't have to do corrections, things like that. It also makes this easier for us as the reviewers, so we don't have as many corrections to suggest. Okay, so basically we're just going to go through just a general idea of what is required for the first turn-in, as well as the things that we'll be looking for the thesis itself. Okay. In the back is Annabelle. She is our program assistant. She will also be helping out with reviewing theses. TAMU Sherman, which you have all interacted with when you submitted your proposals, is also a reviewer for the theses themselves. Okay, so we've got three of us that basically have to work through 180 to 200 theses. Okay, so it can be kind of daunting. So the less corrections we have to make, the better. Okay, so starting off, just to kind of go through what is the role of the honors in undergraduate research. Basically, as a thesis reviewer, we are looking for uniformity, consistency, legibility, and format of your actual theses. Okay, the actual content itself is basically between you and your advisor. Okay, unfortunately, we're not experts in every single field at A&M. I do fungal genetics, so if you have a paper on fungal genetics, I can review that for content. But otherwise, pretty much everything that's going to be out there is going to be based off of what you and your research advisor think is most applicable to your research topic. One thing I will mention, these documents that you're producing are going to be made available publicly. There's about a 2-year wait, but after that they are made available publicly. So these documents, we try to make them as professional as possible. Okay, we're trying not to, it's not something that's going to come back and haunt you, but people can look this up, and if they see something that's pretty subpar, that may not reflect as well on you. Okay, so we try to make these as professional as possible, hence where all this formatting and uniformity and consistency comes from. How long does it take to write a thesis? It depends. Really depends on what you're doing. If you've got research projects going along, you've got data that you're collecting, typically you can't write your conclusions and things like that until after you collect data. However, you can start on an introduction, looking up background information. Why are you doing this project? Information like that. Hence the reason that we have the first chapter introduction as your first deadline. Okay, so regardless of whether you have data or not, you can look up some background information about what you're doing. Okay, and that also goes for humanities majors as well. I might get a little science-centric on this. I'm trying not to, trying to make sure this is available to all departments. And if I do, if there are humanities-specific questions, feel free to ask me. Okay. Okay. The main thing is to plan ahead. Hopefully, if you have an IRB or need an IRB, you've already got that, or it's in the works. The sooner you start writing, the sooner it'll will definitely be better. The longer you wait, we can tell. If you wait the night before to try to do this, it's going to be kind of obvious. So start now. Start reviewing with your research advisor the actual document itself. Okay. Most professors like to see what their name is attached to before it gets sent out to other people to see. And that's one thing to keep in mind. Your research advisor is there to advise you. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask questions. I know it's sometimes hard to get a hold of a PI. I have one myself. But really they are there to help you. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask questions, or if you have some concerns with what you're writing, feel free to talk to your research advisor. You must adhere to the thesis chapter deadlines. This is just kind of our way of making sure that there's progress made with the document as time goes along. One thing that's different between us and, let's say you're a graduate student and you're writing a thesis for a master's or a dissertation, they don't have deadlines. They don't have like periodic deadlines. They have just a single deadline. Okay, so that's a final document, you submit it to them and they review it. Our hope was to set up a series of actual timeline or dates that you can submit various chapters and we can edit as we go along, so that you're progressing with your writing, and then at the very end, the final document should be pretty much clean, ready to go. Okay, so that way we're not reviewing 200 documents that have never been looked at once. Okay, and of course, the document also must follow the scholar's thesis format. Okay, so the length of the thesis, it depends. We've had some that are over 100 pages, some that are quite a bit less than that. It really depends on what you're doing and what your research advisor is expecting. Okay, it should be as long as needed to present your research. Okay, typically if you're writing a scientific paper, you want to be as concise as possible, get as much information out in as few as word possibles. In other cases, that's not the case. You want to elaborate as much as possible. Okay, it just depends on what you and your research advisor decide is the best length. Okay, so we have many different resources available for the preparation. The thesis manual, which hopefully everybody's got a copy at some point. If not, I'm going to go to the website and show you where you can actually look at it online. Your research advisor, of course, should be a vast fount of knowledge. The Honors and Undergraduate Research website, which I'll go to here in a second. We also have workshops, such as this one. We are also offering a EndNote and RefWorks workshop as well. We also have access to previously published theses. The oaktrustlibrary.tamu.edu actually has our formerly published theses. So if you're kind of have a writer's block and you don't know quite how to start out or what to write, you can actually review some of these old documents to kind of get an idea of what you're supposed to do. Okay. Now the one thing to mention is this is an outdated format, so don't copy the format they're using. Okay, so the general format, you have preliminary pages, the title page, the table of contents, and the abstract. These are the three most highly formatted pages. Okay, so obviously these are going to be the three we spend the most time with, making sure they're the correct format. You can or cannot include a dedication, acknowledgments, and nomenclature. It's up to you. For the text, the main body of the document, you need your thesis chapters or sections. You also need a references, regardless of whether you're a science major or humanities, it doesn't matter. We require references or works cited. You can also include appendices if you need to add appendices. Okay, so where and how can I find the thesis template? Okay, so basically what I've done is actually developed a thesis template that has the formatting for the title page, the abstract, and the table of contents already preset. So you can basically just cut and paste. And so what I'm going to do real quick is show you where that is at. Okay, so our website is hur.tamu.edu. Hopefully everybody's been to this page at some point. The tab you will be going to is the Undergraduate Research under UGR Scholars. There's another tab right here that says the UGR Scholars Thesis Manual. If you click on that, guess what? There's the thesis manual. Okay, in all its glory. All right. Okay, so for the thesis template, and I'm also going to show you where we have a lot of other documents. If you go to the Undergraduate Research Scholars Program, this very texty page will pop up right here. If you scroll down, let's go down. Okay, you'll notice a couple things. We have the thesis manual, another link, the thesis template, which I'll go through here in just a second, and a link to the thesis examples. And also, which hopefully everybody knows, December 5th, the progress report is also due. That's actually this right here. And if you click on this link, boom, there's the progress report. Okay, this is one of the other documents in addition to your first chapter that you'll need to submit December 5th. And I'll go through how you do that here in a bit. Okay, so the thesis template, if you click on that, boom, you'll see this pops up. The first thing you need to do is make sure to enable editing, otherwise it won't let you do anything. And okay, so here's the thesis template. So obviously your title is not going to be insert title. Just make sure to put in your title. Whatever you submit needs to be word for word on this page. It needs to be in all caps, bold, and 14-point font Times New Roman. This is already preset, so all you have to do is delete this and insert your title. Okay. You're not insert name, so make sure to insert your name as well. Once again, all caps. Is there anybody on a team? Team, okay. If you're doing a team and there's more than one person, you can actually just hit enter, and of course Word likes to automatically capitalize that, which we don't want. And then type in the next person's name. Okay. The thing is, what this does is, the way I've got this set up, the spacing will not actually change. So you'll actually have enough room to insert as many authors as you need. You can also insert each person's major as well at the bottom. Okay. Now, one thing I will point out here, and I'm just going to do a quick little example here. When you cut and paste, let's say you already have your document. You've already written some of it. You've already got your title, everything like that, and you don't feel like rewriting all the text into this document itself. You can simply cut and paste, and of course now I can't see anything. Okay. All right, so here's just an example of a document I wrote. You can just highlight, copy it, and I know this seems kind of simplistic, but in the same instance, some people don't get this correctly. Do not paste, but paste special. You can also click on that little A right there. Basically what that does is it pastes an unformatted text. If you want to do it manually, you can go to unformatted text and hit OK, and you can see it goes with the font that's already present. Okay. If you don't do that, it's going to change the font to whatever you had previously, and it's going to mess up the formatting, and you'll get all kinds of corrections sent back. Okay. The same thing is for your main body of text. If you cut and paste, just make sure to cut and paste unformatted text. Okay, it's all set up to be the correct margins. Is it 1 inch margin for every single page? The page numbering is also set up to automatically page number how it's supposed to be page numbered. The table of contents is also pre-set up as well. If you've ever had to mess with setting up these dots, we've actually got it so that all the dots are nice and even. You do not have to worry about that. If you are not using certain sections, let's say you don't have an acknowledgements, you can just delete that out and it all adjusts automatically. If you need to change the page numbers, oops, don't do that. You can type in as many as you want and the dots will adjust accordingly. Okay? So it's really made to make this as nice and clean looking as possible. The other thing to keep in mind, if you're doing chapters, you'll need to include chapter. If you're doing sections, you'll need to include section. Okay? If you do not have subheadings, just go ahead and remove those. If you need to add subheadings, all you have to do is hit enter after the page number, and it'll automatically be formatted the right spacing and everything like that. Okay? Any questions on that? Try to make it as simple as possible. The next page is the abstract page. Once again, here you'll need to insert your title. In this case, it's sentence case. It's not all caps. Your name, your department name, and your professor's name, as well as your professor's department. The abstract should be 350 words or less. And once again, I'll mention that all this stuff is actually in the thesis manual. So if you decide to make your own, you can. It gives you all the formatting information, and you can make these yourself. Okay. You'll also see it is already numbered at page 1. The title page and the table of contents are not numbered, okay? And so if you don't know how to start numbering at a later page, at page number 1 as the abstract page, basically what you do is you insert a page break and you start numbering again. There is in the thesis manual, again, a reference to a website you can go to actually show you step by step how to do that. But in this case, it's already set up, okay? If you have other pages to add, such as nomenclature or dedication, just go ahead and add those in, and you can move the chapter page down, and you notice it automatically changes the page numbers. The other thing I will mention is that as you work with this and update your table of contents, make sure to change the page numbers. Okay. For this first round of submission, we don't expect you to have chapter 2, chapter 3, conclusions, all page numbered or anything like that. What we expect is the chapter 1 to be the correct page number. That's what we'll be checking. Okay, and as you submit. The other thing to keep in mind is as you submit, so we have Chapter 1 coming up December 5th, and we've got Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4. As you do that, you need to make sure that you update the page numbers on the table of contents. You will also need to include all the stuff beforehand. Okay, so if you're turning into Chapter 2, you also need to include Chapter 1. Okay, so we kind of keep an eye on the document as it progresses. Okay, so like I said, we try to make it as straightforward as possible. If you start to encounter some sort of errors, if there's some sort of issue with how the formatting looks or the font looks, we'll pretty much pick that up in the first round of edits. Okay, and also if you are concerned, just go to the thesis manual. All the information is right there. Okay, so getting to the actual text itself, and I'm going to go through some examples of each of the first 3 pages as well as what we expect on the chapter pages. The text is going to consist of an introduction. Your main body of text, depending on what you're doing, can either be chapters or sections. Okay. The one thing that, regardless of whether you're science or humanities, it doesn't matter, that you have to include is a summary or conclusion chapter. Okay. This is kind of our way, if you're a science person, to figure out, okay, well, you've got all this data, you've got these results, what does it mean? Okay, and this is kind of our, chance for you to say, okay, well, I did all this work, how is it significant? What does it mean? Okay, if you're a humanities major, what did you gain from this experience? Okay, delving into whatever research that you're doing, did you gain anything from that experience? Okay, and the idea behind all of this is it's supposed to be a learning experience. Okay, so the other sections, references or works cited, as I mentioned, it doesn't matter if you're a science major or humanities, a references or works cited is required. Your appendices as needed, if you have figures or certain equations or tables or certain things that don't fit in the main body, you can use appendices for that. As I mentioned, these are all the specifications for the thesis itself, 1-inch page margins. I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically Times New Roman, 12-point font, you can't go wrong. Okay. For paragraphs, this is one thing I will mention. All paragraphs, you do not indent the paragraphs. Okay, so don't indent. I know it's kind of a force of habit, but do not indent the paragraphs. And you also want to include a single empty line between paragraphs, and I'll show some examples of that here in just a second. Okay, so here's the title page and its glory. The title of the thesis needs to be 14-point font, bold, centered, all caps, and then you can go through the rest of the information. Once again, it is not numbered. For your table of contents, you need to list all your major headings, chapter, or section. And then you need to also include your first level subheadings. Okay, we don't need the second level or third level, we just need the first level subheadings. And I'll show some examples of the various subheadings that you can do. The other thing is that titles must match. If the title of your chapter is introduction, it better say introduction, okay? And we will check to make sure that the titles match and that the subheading titles also match, okay? And generally speaking, for subheadings, as long as you're consistent, you can either do sentence case or capital and the rest lowercase. That's fine. Just choose whatever you want to do. But make sure it's consistent between the table of contents and the main body of text. Okay. The abstract, you got your abstract title, your name, as well as the information for your professor. It needs to stay 350 words or less. This is also the first page of the document, so it should be labeled page 1. The abstract, and I'll go into that here in just a second, what else do with the first one, first submission. Here are some optional pages. This is your dedication page. Whenever we say put an empty space between something, this is what we're talking about. Okay, so basically we've got a double-spaced 14-point font line, and then we've got a 12-point font empty line. Okay, that's just a standard. Any time we say an empty space, 12-point font, empty line. That's it. Okay. You'll also, here's the acknowledgments. Once again, keeping with the same formatting. The main thing is to make sure that these pages all look similar when it comes to the formatting. Nomenclature. Okay. And then getting to the main body of text, all your chapter or section titles should be 14-point font, bold, all caps. The text is all 12-point font, double-spaced. Once again, paragraphs do not indent, and there should always be a double-spaced line between the paragraphs. The subheadings, if you have a first-order subheading, it's bold, second is italicized, and the third is just regular font. And just to kind of give you an example of this, I know this is kind of tedious. Unfortunately, this is the stuff we have to look at. So,
I made the rules, so you need to enforce it.
yeah, there you go. All right, so yeah, so here's just an example of a chapter 1. We've got chapter 1 introduction. This is a 14-point font, double-spaced. You've got a single 12-point line here. This is an example of a first-order subheading. It's bold. This is an example of a second order where it's italicized. You'll notice between the paragraphs we have an empty line. Okay, so that's what we're looking for as you're writing your document. If for some reason you're typing along and you have a title that's on a page by itself, basically orphaned, we prefer you go ahead and put that on the next page. It looks a little awkward if you just have a title by itself. So unfortunately, Word likes to think it's smarter than you are, and will sometimes add spacing that you don't necessarily want. So we'll go through that here in just a second. Okay, if you decide to add figures, okay, figures, once again, they're going to be different depending on what you're doing. Your professor may want a certain format or style with the figures themselves. The things that we require, though, are that the figure caption be underneath the figure itself. Okay, so if you include figures, make sure the caption's underneath. If you decide to do FIG or spell out figure, that's fine. Just stay consistent. Okay, so make sure that all your figure captions say figure or all say FIG. Okay. The other thing is, generally speaking, when you're writing the caption, single space is the best. You're trying to keep it as compact as possible. So single space is perfectly acceptable for that. You also don't necessarily want it to be as big as the normal text, but if it's too small and we can't read it, that does us no good. So generally what we suggest is a 10-point font for the figure caption. Okay, but once again, once you figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to do for my figure caption, make sure to stay consistent throughout your captions. Okay. The tables, if you have a table for some reason and you need to insert a caption, that goes at the top. So unlike the figures, it goes at the top. However, the formatting for the figure or table caption should be similar to your figure captions. Okay, so 10-point font, single spaced. If you spell out table, I don't think you can, shorten table. So just keep it table. But anyway, make sure it stays at the top, figure captions at the bottom, and just make sure they're consistent with the figure captions as well. Okay, so the main thing I hope, if you're picking up on the theme here, is consistency, right? Okay, so I'm not going to read all this because that's a lot of text. But this basically refers to your references. You basically, at the top of the page, need the word references or works cited, 14-point font, bold. I'm going to go through just a couple of handy tools that you can use for using references. The one thing to keep in mind is, as you're writing your document, if you cite something in the text, you need to have a reference for it. Okay, so that's what one of the other things we'll be looking for. And the thing to keep in mind, why do we have references? Because we want, if somebody's reading the paper, to be able to go back and look up those same documents. So we need all the pertinent information to go back and identify that document, such as date, volume number, journal, publisher, etc. Okay. Here's just an example of a references page. Title is centered, 14-point font. You got an empty space. Looks nice and beautiful. You can make the references themselves single space, because sometimes you can have a lot of references and it takes up a lot of space. So single space is definitely acceptable. Just kind of separate them out if possible. What we generally suggest, if you're going to be, as you're writing your document, is to use either EndNote or RefWorks. These are really handy tools as you write your document. EndNote is actually available for free from the software.tamu.edu. If you download it, well, you get it for free. They send you an email, you download it. It'll actually put a tab in Word. Okay, so you can just click on the tab and you've got EndNote open. Okay, and you can add your references. Now, the one thing to keep in mind, These do not have any specific formatting, so you'll actually need to go to the references page and change the formatting, okay, to 12-point Times New Roman. Okay. Very handy tool, though. Okay. Once again, I'm not going to read all this. Basically, if you need appendices, feel free to add them, as many as you want. This is just a general idea of what an appendix looks like. Once again, consistency. If you've got a table, make sure that your table caption goes to the top. If you have a figure, make sure your figure caption goes at the bottom. Okay? And there's not a limit to the number of appendices that you can add. Okay, so just kind of some simple stuff of what is due with the first chapter. So the title page, which should be completed because everybody knows their name and their title of their project. The table of contents, as I mentioned earlier, you're not going to have your completed document and you're not going to know every single page that stuff's going to be on, and the titles may change as well. But just to have the table contents set up so you can see if you are using the correct formatting. The abstract, as the question was asked earlier, we expect to have some sort of draft of an abstract. You all wrote proposals. You've got access to an abstract right there. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. We're not asking you to come up with something brand new. And that also, depending on your PI, that also may change. But for now, we're not requiring that be completed. We just need to make sure that you've got something. The optional pages, if you choose to include these, one thing I will mention, if you decide to add the dedication, acknowledgments, and nomenclature, go ahead and put those in as page spaces. So basically, put a single page, even if it's blank, so that way you don't have to redo all your page numbering at the end of the document. Okay, so if you're going to add those in, go ahead and add those 3 pages, just leave them blank, and then start your chapter 1. Okay. Okay, also, of course, your chapter 1 or section 1. And once again, most of the reviewing of this section, we're going to depend on your professors to make sure that the content is up to par. Okay. The progress report, which I showed everybody how to get to the progress report, that will also be due. The one thing I will mention, if we send you back corrections, which hopefully nobody will have corrections, right? No? Okay. If for some reason we send back corrections and you have to resubmit your chapter 1, you will also need to resubmit the progress report. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's a glitch in the system. It just doesn't recognize it. It just kind of kicks it out. So you'll just keep in mind you'll have to resubmit the progress report if you get some sort of needs corrections. Okay. Okay. So how do you submit your chapter sections and progress report? Hopefully everybody has been to the scholarsthesis.tamu.edu. The process is pretty much similar. I'm going to go through it here in just a second as to when you submitted your proposal. Also keep in mind that there's sticky notes to pay attention to. They give you instructions for uploading the documents. Your thesis submission should be set up as a source file, and your progress report should be set up as a supplemental file. If you're part of a team, the only person who needs to submit this first chapter is the team leader. Okay, so each chapter the team leader will submit, and only the team leader. At the very final submission, when we submit the PDF document, that's when every person in the team will just need to submit their own document. Okay. The other thing I will mention, as you're uploading files, we prefer that you upload a Word document. So please try not to do like Google Docs or something like that. It doesn't work at all. Plus, when we give you comments back, we tend to give them as Word comments, and it's much easier for us to give you specific direct comments as we're going through the document if it's as a Word file. Okay. Okay, so let's go through the website. I'm just going to briefly go through submitting your document, and then I'm going to go through some common pitfalls. So hopefully everybody's familiar with the scholarsthesis.tamu.edu. One thing I will mention, regardless of whether it's chapter 1, 2, 3, or your final document, you always click on the Start Submission button. Even though you've already submitted, it's always going to stay Start Your Submission. Okay, so whenever you're ready to upload your document, click the Start Your Submission button. Okay. And be wise on what you choose for your net ID. All right. Okay, so here is the first page that pops up, verify your information. The other thing that I'm going to point out is right down here at the bottom, whatever email is here is where all the corrections as well as all of your any kind of emails that we have for you are all going to be sent to. Okay, so whatever it says here, if this is an email you don't use, it's one that you barely check, start checking it. Okay, because that's where all the corrections as well as any kind of questions we have for you or any kind of comments that we send, they will all be sent to that email address. Okay, just make sure to keep that in mind. Save and continue. There's nothing to do on the license agreement. You insert your title here. This should be the title that you have on your title page. At the end of the submissions, the very final check, we go through and we make sure that this title matches what you have in your document. Okay. You choose your program date, which there is one option, May. Be sure to choose 2015. Continue on. And this is the page where you actually start to submit your document. And you'll notice over here on the right, there are these sticky notes. They go through a step-by-step instructional on how to upload your document. You'll see choose type. You have either progress report as a supplemental file or final, or it's not your final thesis draft, it'll be your first chapter draft, but that's the source file, okay? So if you're uploading your chapter 1, that'll be the source file marker that you choose. Okay, so briefly just to go through some common pitfalls. Okay, we've got our lovely title page, it's all formatted correctly. We've got our table of comments all correctly formatted. Abstract page, you'll notice once again, paragraph, no indentation, all double spaced. Okay, so here's where it gets a little tricky. I can see an error here already. Okay, now this is what you get for staring at like 150 of these things. Okay, there's actually too much space underneath here. Okay, now what I mean by that is that if you highlight this text, you'll notice Word has decided to add a space before paragraph. Okay, so you'll notice normally when you highlight text, it'll go flat right along there. To correct this, which we may ask you to do this, to remove space before paragraph or after, all you have to do, and this is both in the newest form of Word as well as this version of Word, go to line spacing. And in case you didn't know it, this is where you choose single or double spaced. But all you have to do is go to this option right here, remove space before paragraph. And you notice how the text actually moves? And there you go. Okay. So if we ask you, if we highlight a line and we have a word comment that says remove space after paragraph, that's all you have to do. You just highlight the line, click on line spacing, and remove space after paragraph. Pretty straightforward. It's also something if you want to look for, you can look for. You just highlight your text, and like I showed you, like you'll see the extra space above the text itself. Okay. Okay, some other common errors that we have. Now, the trick is, if you try to submit this to us without doing anything with those track changes, we're going to have all these lines and all these corrections that we're going to see. And that doesn't look like a completed document, right? So, to get rid of these, all you have to do is just go to Review. And you notice here at the top, there's track changes. That's how they add them in. All you have to do is go to Accept, hit the little arrow. And if you want to accept all the changes, or if you decide you want to have some corrections, generally we assume our professors know best. You just accept all changes in document, and the lines go away. Okay? And then no longer are there track changes or scratch throughs or anything like that. It'll take them out and insert the new track changes. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, We generally, when we review the documents, will offer Word comments. This is a Word comment. When you open up your document, you'll see like an extra area that opens up on the side. That's where our comments are. In this case, we normally highlight the error that we see, and then we put whatever comment, like in this case, explain more in detail. Okay. Once you have gone through and completed the corrections, to get rid of these comments, because once again, we don't want all these comments in our document, all you have to do, click on the comment, go up here in the same tab, which is Review. Right next to Track Changes, there's Comments. Go to Delete, and delete all comments in document. Okay? And that just takes that away, and then you're ready to submit. And once again, here's an example of a first level subheading. Hopefully we've kind of shown you just what to expect when we start to send you corrections. I think that's really like the most confusing point whenever we go through this process, is that sometimes people don't realize, oh, they've made corrections in their Word comments, and sometimes they don't see that. That Review tab, if you are for some reason not seeing the Word comments, that is where you can access them as well to make them visible. The other thing to keep in mind, and of course, the other thing to keep in mind is this is a professional document. Okay, that's our ultimate goal, is to make this publicly available and to make it look like a professional document. This is representing your work that you're putting into this. Not every undergrad is doing this. Obviously, you're putting extra time and effort into this, and so we want to make it look as professional and as nice as possible. Reference the thesis manual for any kind of formatting. It goes top to bottom through the entire document, every single line, what font it needs to be, which is Times New Roman, or 12-point or 14-point font. Okay. After your first submission, if there are corrections, we will provide them to you. And the main thing to keep in mind is we're here to help. Okay. So feel free to email us, ask us questions, because the only way we're going to get these corrections done and get this to looking like a professional grade document is to work together. Okay. So keep in mind, our job is to help you guys. Okay. And gals. Okay, so final slide. Dr. Duncan McKenzie, who is graciously standing in the back there, is the head of all of us. Tama Sherman is our program coordinator, Annabelle Amond is our program assistant, and myself, thesis assistant. We three people shall be busy editing all the theses for the first December 5th deadline. If you have any questions, feel free to email ugr@tamu.edu. And of course, the website is hur.tamu.edu.